Today we're talking to Paul Chatterton of LILAC community in Leeds, which we'll talk about. And Paul, I often wonder how to talk to people I don't know, where to pitch the conversation. But I watched a YouTube video that you did everyday action or something like that. And I loved it. We're exactly on the same page.
Great.
You went to live with the Zapatista. That must have been very interesting.
Yeah, 2 years of solidarity work, stopped being an academic, and dug holes in the jungle for 2 years, carrying bags of cement. It was a bit of an eye-opener, but you know, the thing I liked about that is we came back thinking, what does it mean to be a Zapatista in the UK? That was the great kind of like sentiment I brought home. And from there we started to kind of lay down infrastructure, you know, build alternatives, because that's what they wanted us to do, not hang out with them in Mexico, go home and do it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm coming from an environmental perspective. I've worked in the environment field for 25 years. There's a crash coming. There's a combination of reasons, but it seems unavoidable now. And the people I talk to, they're all saying the same thing. Let's build infrastructure. Let's build a network of whatever it is: cooperatives, cooperative housing, cooperative employment, permaculture networks, transition networks, to catch people basically when the crash happens, and you know, to mitigate the effects and push it back a bit. But things need to happen. Things need to happen on the ground, which is why what you're doing is so interesting.
Great, thanks.
And I'm very interested in the multiple home ownership society model. In Common Ground in Leeds. Where did the multiple home ownership society idea come from?
The mutual home ownership. I mean, it was like, I suppose, a kind of coming together of lots of things the cooperative sector had been doing for decades, and realising how do we service this bit in the middle called intermediate housing. So not those that are on social rental housing provided by the state, and not those in own occupation, but this big bit in the middle. So how do we get together democratically and self-manage our own community along the lines of self-management, but to build in economic equality. So you house it. The key thing with the MHOS, the Mutual Home Ownership Society, is that the value of your home is linked to wages and not local house prices. It's more like owning a car than a house. So you de-commodify your asset. You jump out of the housing market into a social market, which is really exciting. Everyone pays the same. Everyone pays 35%. Everyone pays the same percentage, and that issue of parity is really important.
So if you get a percentage, if you get promotion or something, or you get a different job and your income suddenly doubles, then your housing costs double as well. All right, okay.
Well, you pay more. You just buy a greater stake in your housing quicker, and then when you've paid off all the equity in your house that we've allocated you, you only pay 10% as a service charge. So you'll just get to that. So you'll just get to the end of your 35% payment plan quicker if your salary goes up. But we also, with the slightly higher earners, we ask them to take on a slightly higher proportion of the build cost of their homes, which is really exciting. So they can take on, say, 110 or 120% of the build cost of their home, which means that other people can take on 90 or 80% of the build cost of their home. So there's a leveling device there, which is quite exciting.
So it's about equality, not just cooperative ownership. So we better give people a bit of context. So you're talking about LILAC in Leeds, which is low impact living.
Indeed.
What is it? Low impact living.
Affordable community. Affordable community,
Affordable community, and that's 22 homes, is it?
20 homes with a common house. So there's about 50 odd of us that live there with 13 kids. And we started 5 years ago. I mean, the homes are built from straw, timber and lime. So out of the box, we're a carbon sequestering community. So one of the big things is that just by the way we live, rather than building out of brick and cement, which is carbon emitting, we are carbon sequestering. So we're a positive contributor to climate change crisis just out of the box. And also the adjustments we make through changing the way we live, especially through the sharing economy at LILAC, reducing our community footprint of carbon emissions, car sharing, carpooling, cooking together, that kind of thing. We don't have to have 20 tools, 20 lawnmowers, 20 washing machines. You know, we share this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So it ticks all the boxes. It's sustainability and cooperative ownership and equality. It sort of ticks a lot of boxes. I saw
what I'm calling us now is.
Sorry, go on.
What I'm calling us now is, you know, like the whole scientific community is talking about how do we hold temperatures to 1.5 degrees of global warming. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, that's the big challenge from the Paris Agreement. What I'm talking about now is that LILAC is a 1.5 degree compliant community. You know, we're living within the boundaries of our global biosphere. And how do we replicate that on that basis? So we need an urgent and rapid transition to hold 1.5 degrees of global warming. So we are a 1.5 compliant neighbourhood. That's the exciting thing.
It's a bit like the one planet. It's a bit like the one planet development idea, where you pledge to live within one planet in Wales.
Well, it is, and it's a bit more than that now, isn't it? Because we've also got to go beyond the 100% reduction, right? So we've actually got to make up for our previous sins almost, right? And start to radically not just get back to a baseline, but also take it further, yeah? So we've got more than catch up to do.
I'm very interested in what you're doing there. It's about ownership of land, not just about building technology, although that's very interesting too, obviously. But it's land values that have produced the housing crisis, isn't it? It's not the price of the buildings themselves. So any model that challenges that has to be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we've got massive market dysfunction, yeah, where we've got volume builders, land banking, and what they're doing is they're building things on sites. They happen to be called houses, but all they are is a device to extract as much money as possible for shareholders, yeah?
Yeah.
So it's a completely defunct model. What we need is land tax reform, community land reform, where vast tracts of land are put back into community homes, because it's the communities that can build in community wealth. So we know how to build community wealth, so money circulates within the local economy. That's the key thing. That's what community housing like co-ops and CLT, community land trusts, can do. We can recycle community wealth.
So what was your role in starting LILAC?
Well, I was one of the co-founders with about 6 of us that had the original idea, and we took it through. We held that vision, and then we put a membership out, and then we grew from that initial 6 up to 50 odd people. But I live there now, so I've lived there for 5 years.
Okay. Yeah. So it must make you feel really good to see something in existence, not just an abstract idea.
It does, and we still have dozens of people coming through the door who want to see what we've done, because there's nothing like a good example. Because everyone's like, well, how do we tackle all these big problems? And you're like, well, we do this. You start now. You think big, start now, and just build from there, yeah, and just try some stuff. So a lot of it's about prototyping, failing quick, learning, moving on, developing, because we're still a learning community. The thing about LILAC, we're still learning, we're still developing. So there's, we've not found some kind of like endpoint yet.
And it's not that some of the houses are affordable, is it? They all are, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, so they're all on the same basis as a leasehold. So you all get a lease from the society, and then once a month, the whole society pays a mortgage payment to the bank.
So everybody is a sort of a homeowner rather than a renter.
That's right. So everyone's a homeowner. Everyone gets a lease. You get a permanent lease, and you pay a third of your income. And so in return for that, and what that third pays for is the price of your home, but also an 80% reduction in energy bills, because we've got very high insulated houses, and we've got a fully repairing lease. So actually you get quite a lot for that 35%, even though it feels quite a big outlay. There's a lot of hidden costs in home ownership these days, with high fuel bills and high repair bills.
And what about if you end up on benefits? Is it still, I don't know, is it 35% of your benefits, or is there a certain level you pay if you're on benefits?
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't work on benefits, because you can't accrue equity on benefits. So we've got to freeze your equity and then put you on a tenancy.
And you pay rent.
Yeah, So, but we've never had to do that, because one of the great things about LILAC is that rather than being in a housing association where you might just kind of get kicked out if you lose your job, we support you as a community. You know, we might or filling gaps, all that kind of thing. Because we're a co-op, right? So we're good to our members, yeah.
Yeah. So does a community land trust own the land, and the co-op sort of looks after the buildings? Is that?
Well, it doesn't. In our case, it doesn't, but it could do. It's just that we didn't have a land trust around when we set up our member co-op. So the member co-op owns the land, but it would be nice.
The co-op owns the land as well as the buildings.
Yeah. So LILAC Cooperative Limited owns the land and the buildings. Which is great in a way, because we're just a self-governing community, but, you know, we're very outward-looking. But in an ideal world, there would be a community land trust in Leeds. In this case, we've got Leeds Community Homes now, because we set up Leeds Community Homes to do this. And then Leeds Community Homes could start to replicate all these little co-ops and own the land in perpetuity under them. Yeah, that'd be the exciting thing.
So it's a registered housing co-op.
Yeah, we're a fully registered member. An industrial and providence society, as we call it in England, IPS, yeah.
So is the thing that's new about the mutual home ownership society the percentage of the income as your payment? Is that the thing that's new?
Yeah, I mean that's right. Well, I mean it's the government says you shouldn't exceed 35% of your income on housing, because beyond that it'd be unaffordable. So I suppose the unique thing is it's affordable in perpetuity, because it's always 35%. And the big thing really is linking the value of your equity to local wages and not house prices. So rather than house prices doing this, the value of LILAC does this. So it's linked to your wage, so it doesn't ever get unaffordable. Because the big thing the big problem is that wages are 7 times lower than house prices in Britain. That's the issue. Whereas in LILAC, they're the same.
Yeah. Have you got a waiting list?
Yeah, we had one flat come up the other month, and we had 29 applications.
29 applications for one flat.
Yeah, so we could build another LILAC tomorrow. It's just about getting the groups together, getting the land. There's a massive appetite out there for people to live differently, you know. But the issue is we're stuck with the volume builders and unscrupulous private landlords, right? So we can do what we can do, but we want to create a whole movement where people can do this themselves. Yeah.
So I've had a look at Stroud co-housing, and I think the accommodation there has become unaffordable.
Yeah, I mean they're using a co-housing design, which is nice, but essentially, I mean, you know, they're great people. We know them, and but I mean, essentially they're private homes, so you can buy and sell them. So they let the market dictate the price of the houses.
Right. Okay.
The thing is, you know, the initial resident will benefit from a particular build cost, but then they'll let the market dictate. So what we need is some kind of price cap. Yeah. So resale, we call it a resale covenant. You know, in the normal market, what we need is a resale covenant to say you can't sell your house over a percentage increase.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what's going to happen is we're going to get kind of green gentrification, yeah, where eco houses are just for the wealthy.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think of the model, some more about the model and what will keep them affordable in perpetuity. I suppose it's this clause which says that your payment is 35% of your income. Is that could the members sort of decide to change that? Is there some sort of an asset lock on it?
When we bought the land from Leeds City Council, there's a covenant on the land which says that if we all wound up the co-op and carpet bagged it, we would have to dispose of the asset to a similar organisation, a social.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So we wouldn't be able to. Yeah. So that's you know, because we don't want to get. I mean, sometimes co-ops get a bad name because of that carpet bagging. And we want to avoid that. And I think there's new legislation now that stops you doing that anyway. But yeah, I mean, we need to see co-ops as a positive influence in our society.
Yeah, I used to live at Redfield Housing Co-op in Buckinghamshire, and they had an asset lock which said exactly that. It's if this property is ever sold, we bought it for people bought it for £70,000 in 1978, and now it's worth millions. And there's a lock which says, yes, of course you can sell it, but you have to buy land and start a new community. Or you have to give it to some umbrella organisation in the cooperative world, which doesn't allow the current members to make any profit out of it, which is what the founders wanted.
Yeah.
So the difference between the what do you call it, MHOS?
Yeah, the Mutual Home Ownership Society, MHOS. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that makes it different from a normal sort of cooperative or a community land trust. Is it only this sort of income clause? Is that sort of it? That's what makes it a different model?
Well, you're buying equity in your house, so you basically you're not just paying rent, which goes out, and you don't have any stake in your housing. You every time you pay your member charge every month, that's buying equity in your house. So your house is worth this much, and you're buying little bits of equity until you bought all the equity in your house. And then that's yours to take with you. So when you go, you get that value repaid, and then the incoming member then has to buy that equity from you. But the key thing is the value of that equity, which doesn't increase.
So I guess. Sorry, go on.
No, fine, go on. Yeah.
So I guess it sort of keeps you on the housing ladder if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
But
well, no, yeah,
you're not going to get as much money out as you would if you bought an ordinary house. If you bought an ordinary house in the market and you sold it again, you'd be higher up the housing ladder. But
yeah.
because LILAC, it doesn't do that. Do you think people might sort of fall behind over time? The longer they stay there, the harder it is for them to get back on the housing ladder.
Well, indeed, but and that's what we've discussed. But someone's got to make a stand. Yeah, it's like one of these things that, like, where are we going as a society? And people have tried experiments over the years, and actually we get a much stronger social return than the financial return. Yeah, it's really important for us that we have a great life, and it's actually, what do you prioritize? Do you want to just buy a house, just be part of that system that's buying a house to increase it as an asset bubble? Yeah. And we put a red line in the sand. Not for
good for you. Good for you, really. It's So do people have to pass some sort of do people have to do the members have to agree for somebody to join? They have to check them out and make sure they want to live with them.
Yeah, like any membership organisation, you've got to be approved by all the members. Yeah, exactly. It could be a food co-op or a tractor-only co-op. Yeah, I mean, it's just like a membership co-op. Yeah. And, people tend to be self-selecting, but we try to keep an eye on diversity. So, it's all pretty positive.
I think people find the terminology difficult, I think, meaning that I do as well. Where does co-housing fit into this? Is that the umbrella term? Is mutual home ownership society, is that a type of co-housing?
Great. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, it's nice to explore this actually, because there's 5 key elements, right? Which make the world of community-led housing. So, and we're all of them in a way. So the first one's co-housing, and co-housing is really just a design methodology where you just kind of like build in neighborliness, how we lay out your community and how people interact.
It's the architecture rather than the ownership.
Yeah, but it's the social architecture also. It's how, you know what I mean? So, like, you build in places where people are going to bump into each other and look after each other. So how you design the layout and that kind of stuff, yeah? So that's co-housing. Yeah. And then you've got co-ops, who's obviously co-ops is the kind of member democratic bit where, you self-manage through cooperative structure. And then you've got the land trust bit. So the community land trust movement is the bit which is ownership of land, the stewardship of land by communities, which is the really important third bit. The fourth bit is the custom and self-build movement. And the custom and self-build movement are people like building their own houses. So say, we're not going to let the volume builders do it, we'll do it ourselves. That's the fourth bit. And then the fifth bit is actually the self-help movement. So this is a kind of like people who are retrofitting their neighborhoods and saying we're actually going to empower ourselves and train ourselves up with new skills to deliver our own housing. So those are the 5 bits together, which excitingly make this world called community-led housing. Yeah.
So with the MHOS model, do the houses have to be together? Do they have to be together in the same place, or can they be scattered around a town?
We're talking about little clusters of houses. So, for me, co-housing and co-ops are like the perfect 2 halves of the same coin. And it's like, So the co-housing cooperatives are what I'm really into. So you have clusters of houses, maybe 20 or 30, and then they could be federated around town. So you could have like groupings and they all federate together. That would be really powerful. Because then you could move between them. So you're not stuck in one place, you could move to the other one.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of living closely with other people. It's difficult to achieve. I mean, I can see three sort of main ways. There's a friend of mine called Rick Watson in Sheffield. They bought 5 terraced houses in the same street and knocked all the fences down and made one big garden. They put a big sort of conservatory on the back, linking all the houses together. That's difficult to achieve because you've got to find the houses that are next to each other. That's very difficult. And then there's new sort of co-housing project, LILAC, etc., which is difficult to do. I think LILAC took 6 years, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think Bridport co-housing have just got their planning permission, but I think that's been in the running for more than 10 years.
Yeah.
It takes a long time.
Indeed.
Or you can find an old school or a clinic or a disused council building or something like that and convert it, which is probably the easiest to do.
Yeah.
But difficult to find the properties. And plus, so it can't spread as easily. How can we churn them out? How can we get more of them?
No, sure, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, because the government's backing this with a big grant, this community-led housing grant, startup grant, so that's one big way we can do it. And things like these, what we call these city hubs. So Leeds Community Homes is the city hub for all this. But the first one you mentioned, the retrofit co-housing, is, I think, the biggest potential because most of the houses we're going to have in the future are already here, right?
Yeah.
Unless we're not going to start bulldozing cities.
Exactly.
So retrofitting, take any street in Britain, knock down all the gardens, push the cars to one end, make the middle house a common house. You could transform every street in Britain overnight. It would be and actually at quite a low cost. So retrofitting our streets.
How are you going to persuade all the people in the street to do it, though?
Yeah, but that's interesting. So this is not a technical issue, is it? This is a behaviour change issue then.
Yeah.
So that's where we need to. So it's like anything. If we're going to deal with climate change, resilience, community breakdown, we've got all the technical answers. It's a matter of winning hearts and minds and just showing them that actually your life you'll be able to flourish better if you live this way rather than that way. Yeah. Like, we need a couple of more examples and people can go visit those streets and say, look, if we all park at one end, you create this massive home zone which is safe for all the kids. You know what I mean? You can have a street party, cinema outside cinema. You could have the middle house club together and buy it, have a cinema, clubhouse, meeting room, I suppose because how else are we going to live? How else are we going to adjust our lives?
Yeah, I suppose if people already own their own homes, to try and get them to sign them over to some other scheme would be really difficult. Yeah.
And the legal issue, because we in Britain are really tied up into like home ownership, right? And people are not going to want to be tied into this arrangement, this communal arrangement, because will it affect the value? The big problem is the values that people attach to their house, the financial value. So if that's the sacred cow, isn't it? And messing about with that is going to really scare people.
How do we get over that?
But I think there's going to have to be other incentives, isn't there, in terms of saying, actually, look at this might increase the value of your home because, well, we see this anyway. We need some studies, we need some research to say, if you transform the context, make a different place outside your home, it will actually increase the value of your home rather than reduce it.
That would be very useful research.
Look at places like Vauban in Freiburg. Yeah, look at places like Vauban in Freiburg, completely car-free community where 80% of people cycle, really beautiful green places. And the values of the homes there are quite high. We kind of know this instinctively. Good places to live, leafy suburbs where there's less cars and more greenery, they're higher value places, yeah? And we're not talking about displacement and gentrification, by the way. We're talking about a different way of valuing our neighbourhoods.
Yeah. So there's a UK MHOS network now, isn't there? Is it a growing thing? I mean,
we've got a few. Well, I mean, it's a movement in its infancy. We've got interest all over Britain, in Liverpool, Newcastle, Leeds, London, where people want to explore it. But I'd just be happy to support any types of innovations in housing that are kind of building community and cooperative ways of living and stuff. So doesn't have to be MHOS, but if people want to do that, we're open for kind of like supporting people. Yeah.
What's the main barrier, do you think?
Probably land, but probably changing hearts and minds at the same time. So just doing kind of member education that people can live like this, and it's going to be a nicer way to live. But also land, you know, releasing land, you know, because there's lots tied up in corporate land banks, and they're quite difficult to get hold of. You know, we all live in communities where you see that bit of land over that fence, wonder who owns it, why it's been derelict for 10 years. You know what I mean? So it's getting hold of doing those asset transfers from councils and stuff like that. Yeah.
What can people do if they think it's for them? Where do they start? Where can they get more information? Where can they get stuck into something?
Yeah, so there's loads of support bodies, sector support bodies. There's like the UK Community Land Trust Network, the UK Co-housing Network, the Confederation of Cooperative Housing, the National Self and Custom Build Portal. There's like loads of sector bodies here, yeah, and they can all offer support and examples for anyone. And what we're doing at Leeds, creating Leeds Community Homes, is a hub for the city where it's a one-stop shop for people who want to do this. And there's other examples emerging in in London, in Birmingham, other cities where we're supporting them to create these hubs. So there's plenty of support out there. And then I mentioned there's this community-led housing grant, which people can Google and find out about this multi-million-pound government grant, which is a small start-up pot of money provided by Homes England. So this is the moment for community housing, actually. This is a really good moment. Loads of support out there and a bit of money.
Well, this is actually the case. We've got a few friends who we're all living in London, and we want to sell our houses, and we want to go start something like this somewhere else. We don't know where. Where do we go? Where do we go for advice? Where do we go? Where's the first port of call?
I would just like Google the, our LILAC's got a website, lilac.coop. We do 4 tours a year. We host people and we show them what we've done. I've got my book on LILAC called Low Impact Living. So you can have a read of that. That's the whole LILAC journey. You can search that on the internet. But as I mentioned, those sector support bodies. So have a look at the resources we've got on our website, leedscommunityhomes.org.uk. And then we've got the Co-housing UK Co-housing website, and the Community Land Trust Network website, which has got loads of great resources on. There's going to be a movement to create a portal for all these through a community-led housing portal. So that's coming soon. But at the moment, all those links I mentioned have got loads of great resources on. And you'll get a sense of like the kind of schemes that have been done before. And certainly drop us a line and at least Community Homes, because we can offer people advice when they get in touch with us. Okay. And in London, you've got places like London Community Land Trust, who've got a great website and resources. So in London, there's some great people doing stuff. The London Community Land Trust.
So what are your ambitions next, and how can we help?
I'd like to see 1,000 new community-led housing homes built over the next 10 years. And that's what we're trying to do with Leeds Community Homes. I'd like to support as many little LILAC projects across the country as possible, so people get in touch. And if they're really up for it and they've got a focus group, help mentoring them, helping them through build little LILAC-type communities. I'm really up for that. And that's where I spend a lot of my time advising groups. But also getting them really into, like, you know, we're building great places to live, but we're tackling climate change, economic austerity, you know, so we're tackling the big issues of our time. Because as you said at the beginning, we've got to do this anyway. Within a generation, we've got to be living quite differently. So let's do it this way.
Yeah. So we're, I'm interviewing some really, really interesting people, and they're all sort of building, you know, networks of really great infrastructure on the ground, mainly in the cooperative. So I'm really interested in federating the sort of co-op stroke solidarity economy. And so I'm trying to draw things out of what people are saying to work out ways to federate.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
I'll subscribe you to the blog, so you'll see the other people I'm talking to, and you can have a listen and you can have a read of what they're saying as well.
That's brilliant. And I've pulled together loads of case studies. I've just got another book out. And I've got a great website for it. So I put together loads of great case studies. It's unlockingsustainableCities.org. It's all one word, unlockingsustainableCities.org.
I'll put all these links. Okay, I'll put all these links in the description underneath the video.
Yeah, great to speak to you. It's really good that we're building some momentum here. That's really great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll speak to you again, and I'd love to be kept up to speed in what you're up to. Oh, how can people just be kept up to speed? Have you got a blog? Have you got a newsletter of?
Well, in Lilac, we update our website. I'm on Twitter, so you can follow me on Twitter, Paul Chatterton 9. And then, like I said, this Unlocking Sustainable Cities. People can send me examples, and I'll put them on the website as we go along. So that's a great way to build this. Yeah, and we're also running a master's course here at Leeds Uni, where I work on sustainable cities. So if people want to do a master's in sustainable cities, have a look at that as well.
Fantastic. Good luck to you, Paul. Good luck to you, and very nice talking with you.
Thank you.
Cheers, Paul.
And to you, Dave. Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.